Boys and girls. I put a question on our string to see if you guys would want me to just read a chapter book for the next couple of weeks. It's one of my favorite ones I read when I was in 3rd and 4th grade, and I still really like this one. So I'm going to just read the summary of it. And so it's a story that you're not really interested in or you don't want to listen to it, because it is kind of sad a little bit. But if you don't want to listen to it, you don't have to. Okay, so Dallas and Florida are called the double twins. They have been shuffled between foster families and orphanages all their lives, longing only for a loving place to call home. Though mistrustful that one exists for the likes of them. Tiller and Sari are an older couple whose children are grown up and are long gone. They're each restless for one more big adventure while their bodies are still able to go on an adventure to paddle down a big river or to climb a mountain. So the older couple, they live in Ruby Holler. It's a beautiful, mysterious country place that changes all of their lives. So Tiller and Sari invite Dallas and Florida, the two twins from the orphanage, to come stay with them for their adventures. And so the two kids begin to think that maybe that this older couple isn't so bad after all, and they might end up finding a family to love. But I will warn you that the orphanage and foster families that they kind of talk about, it is a little sad. So again, if you don't want to listen to this story, or if you don't like this story, then you don't have to keep listening to it. Okay, I'm going to try to read about anywhere between 15 to 20 pages. Each recording. Okay, so this is called Ruby Holler. Okay, and it is worth 6 AR points. The Silver Bird. Dallas leaned far out of the window, his eyes fixed on a bird flying lazily in the distance. Sun slanted through the clouds above as if a spotlight were aimed on the bird. A silver bird, Dallas thought, a magical silver bird. The bird turned suddenly, veering south over the small town of Boxton, toward the faded yellow building and the window from which Dallas leaned on. Dallas stretched his arm out. "Here," he called, "over here." The bird swooped toward him and then rose up over the building, high, high into the air, over the alley and the train tracks and the dried up creek. Dallas watched it rise on the air currents over one brown hill and then another until it disappeared. He tried to follow it in his mind. He imagined it flying on until it spied a narrow green valley, a scooped-out basin with a creek, looping and winding its way through the center. He pictured it sweeping down from the sky into the basin of the hills to this place where cool breezes drifted through the trees, and where the creek was so clear that every stone on its bottom was visible. Maybe the silver bird had flown home. "Get out of that window!" a voice shouted from below. "No leaning out of windows!" Dallas leaned a little farther out and called down to Mr. Trippett. "Did you see that silver bird? Get out of that window, or you're going to join your sister down here pulling weeds," Mr. Trippett threatened. Dallas spotted his sister Florida, inching her way along the sidewalk, wrenching clumps of weeds and grass and dirt from the ground. "Putrid weeds," Florida snarled, heaving a clod of dirt over her shoulder. Dallas watched as the clod landed on Mr. Trippett's back, and as the man scuttled over to Florida, he tapped her on the head. Dallas wished the silver bird would return and snare Mr. Trippett and carry him high up over the town and then drop him splat in the middle. All right, so that was chapter 1. These chapters, a lot of them are very, very short, so I'm just going to just keep reading and just say what each chapter is, okay? Chapter 2, The Boxton Creek Home. Boxton was a tired town, a neglected place that looked as if it was in danger of collapsing in on itself. A tangle of old homes and shacks clustered around small stores and buildings that had seen better days. One of these buildings was the Boxton Creek Home for Children, a shackle of a house that tilted towards the train tracks and hills beyond. In this building lived the mean managers, Mr. and Mrs. Trippett, their assistant, Morgan, and 13 children ranging in age from 6 months to 13 years. The two oldest children in the home were twins, Dallas and Florida. They were tall for their age, dark-haired and dark-eyed, with sturdy frames and a rough-edged and unkempt look about them. Dallas was the quieter of the two, and the one more inclined to daydreaming, while Florida was loud and squirmy, with her mouth full of words bursting out and her face full of expression, flashing from surprise to disgust all in an instant. The managers of the home, Mr. and Mrs. Trippett, were middle-aged, cranky, and tired and growing stiff and cold as winter-bound trees. They believed in rules, and their rules were posted on doorways and in hallways and above every child's bed. There were general rules, kitchen rules, bathroom rules, stairway rules, basement rules, outside rules, upstairs rules, and downstairs rules, clothing rules, washing rules, cleaning rules, rules upon rules upon rules. If we didn't have rules, Mr. Tripp would like to say, everything would be chaos. If we didn't have rules, his wife would say, these children would eat us alive. Since Dallas and Florida had lived in the Boxton Creek home longer than any of the other children, they knew all of the rules. They also, they also knew the punishments for disobeying the rules, and they knew them well because they had broken every rule in the Boxton Creek home many times. How can we live every day of our lives without running or shouting or throwing or talking or dropping or spilling? Dallas had once asked Mr. Trippett. Thinking corner, 2 hours, was Mr. Trippett's response. As he sat in the dark corner of the basement, Dallas imagined a broad field rimmed with trees, and in that imaginary field, he ran and shouted through sticks and mud, and when he was tired, he'd lay down in the green grass. And he could feel himself getting smaller and smaller until he was a little baby lying in the grass, and someone with a sweet face would lean down, wrap him up in a white blanket. And so remember, he's the one that likes to daydream. When Florida was caught breaking one of the rules, she was more likely to argue about it, and as a result, she would earn extra punishments. She could not sit still, could not walk when her feet wanted to run, and so, on a fairly regular occasion, she'd be running down the hall and Mrs. Trippett's long arm would reach out and grab her. What does that say? Mrs. Trippett would demand. Florida squinted at the sign. No stinking running. It does not say that, Mrs. Trippett would say, urging her to look closer at the sign. Read it again. No stinky, silly running. Down to the basement. 2 hours in the thinking corner. Ugh, that's stupid. Followed by 2 more hours of floor scrubbing. Putrid. Followed by 2 hours of weed killing. Dallas and Florida had racked up hundreds of hours in the thinking corner, in the dark, cobweb corner of a basement. They had worn these scratchy shirts that says, I've been bad. They have shoveled manure, crawled across acres of field pulling weeds. They peeled potatoes, scrubbed pots and pans, scrubbed the floors, washed the windows, hauled boxes and broken furniture away. Good hard thinking and good hard work never hurt anybody, Mr. Trippett would say. Mr. Trippett, who was a short little man with an awkward walk like a crab scuttling across the ocean, did not particularly like thinking or working himself. But he firmly believed that these things were good for children to do. The home was a misfit operation, lost over the years in a larger system. There were no funds coming in. Social workers no longer came to check on the children. Health workers and building inspectors no longer came to inspect the buildings. There was no longer a doctor on staff or secretarial help. It was run only by the Trippetts, with the help of their overworked assistant, Morgan. Still, the Boxton Creek home was as much as a home as Dallas and Florida knew. On the front of the building, in faded yellow paint, curled in strips like peeling paint, behind the main building, a string of smaller cubes had been added in a crooked path out to the back. Dallas thought it looked like a string of mismatched boxcars laid end to end, and Florida thought it looked like a dragon with a huge mouth at the front door waiting to swallow up children. When children first came to the Boxton Creek, they stayed in one of the bigger rooms in front, but gradually, as the months and years went by, if they had not been placed in another family, they were put farther and farther back to the dark, low-ceilinged, airless rooms in the house. Rotation, Mr. Trippett called it, rotation. Children came and went. Some were taken in by foster families or adopted. A few ran away, but inevitably were returned. One died in his bed, whispering, Who am I? Who am I? And although Mr. and Mrs. Trepid had tried their best to move Dallas and Florida out to other families, the twins, who were troublemakers, all were always brought back to the big front door by those tired adults. Troubled twins, these adults would say. Nothing but trouble. In turn, Dallas and Florida had come to think of most adults as the troubled grown-ups, for that had been their experience. That most grown-ups they'd encounter were short-tempered, impatient, and quick to punish them. They had no way of knowing that there were foster parents or adopting parents who were kind and loving or generous and forgiving. In the narrow world of Dallas and Florida, an adult was someone to escape. Over the years, Dallas and Florida had been squeezed toward the back of the Boxton Creek home. And each of the narrow, lumpy rooms was a lumpy bed, a slim dresser rammed up close to the bed, and a closet. A single light bulb dangled from each ceiling. At night, Dallas and Florida listened to the wail of freight trains making their way through Boxton and on to where? To other places, far, far away. To beautiful places, peaceful places, friendly places. Dallas and Florida had a plan. They would not be in Boxton Creek home forever. They were going to jump on the night train one night and ride out of town very soon. Chapter 3. 20 miles from Boxton was Ruby Holler, a luscious green hidden valley with only 2 cabins nestled in its depths. The cabin at the far end was inhabited by a man who lived on his own and who kept to himself. In the cabin in the middle of the holler lived a 60-year-old man and his wife. One warm morning in June, the man and his wife sat on their front porch. Same old view, the man grumbled. Same old sagging porch. Same old creaky swing. You're pretty grouchy this morning, said his wife. I'm tired of hauling water and chopping wood. Do you think people are right then? His wife asked. Should we move? Get a condo somewhere, have electricity and heat and a washing machine and one of those air conditioner things? Her husband nodded. And a television, maybe. And a garage with one of those automatic doors. That sure would be different, his wife said. It sure would, the man agreed. A small gray bird swooped down from the sky and landed on the porch railing. It cocked its head at the couple as if it were listening to them. All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop there today. So we will read chapter 4 next time. Okay. All right, boys and girls, I hope you enjoy this book so far. Again, if you don't like it or it's too sad for you, then you can choose not to listen. All right, have a good day. Bye.